Folk tales are old, simple, and not too hard to remember. Many are stories that were told long before the invention of printing. They were passed on by word of mouth. Now, if a story is repeated enough times, and if its meaning is lasting, it may be on its way to becoming a folk tale, even if it's make-believe, like the story you'll hear today. The Flea is a story from Spain. Spain, like other countries in Western Europe, has retained many of its customs and traditions of the past. Spain is famous for its beautiful old castles, which can still be seen on the hillsides and in the older cities. Today, many of the Spanish people live in large cities like Madrid and Barcelona. They live in modern homes and apartments, and life in the city is like life anywhere else. But the country life has not changed as much. Farmers live in small villages and towns and tend their fields much as they did in the days of long ago. The people still have a king. However, he is more like our president than the king in our story. The Flea is a tale that shows that people are very much alike all over the world because we like to laugh at ourselves and at others. We cook up explanations for things we don't really understand, and sometimes we just make talk about our everyday lives. Y ahora, escuchemos. Listen to the tale of the Flea.
Había una vez un rey en España. There was once a king of Spain who loved riddles. It just delighted him to ask one that no one could answer. So, of course, he spent many hours thinking of new riddles. One day, as the king was being dressed by his servants, a flea jumped from one of the pages onto the king. The king snapped it up in his fingers and called for his chamberlain. "Chamberlain, what is this?" demanded the king. The chamberlain was very embarrassed when he saw what was in the king's hand. "Oh dear, it's a flea," he said in a low voice. "A flea?" said the king. "Does the king of Spain have fleas?" Oh, no, your highness. I must be mistaken. That cannot be a flea," begged the chamberlain. "Of course it's a flea," shouted the king. "But because it has landed on me, it is a royal flea. Now, I wonder what I should do with it." The poor chamberlain shrugged his shoulders as the king pondered over the flea. At last, the king said, "I know. We shall put this flea in a cage worthy of a royal flea, and we shall feed it royal food. I want this flea to grow as big as a cat. No, let me see, bigger than that, as big as a goat. No, even bigger than that. I want this flea to be as big as an elephant. Then I shall have the flea skinned to make a tambourine for my daughter, Belita." The king was so excited, he shook with laughter. "Don't you see, chamberlain," said the king, "this is truly a riddle worthy of a king. Every suitor that comes to ask for my daughter's hand in marriage shall be asked the riddle. The one who answers it correctly shall marry my daughter. And I think I shall name this flea Felipa." The chamberlain looked at the little flea and wondered to himself if the king had gone mad. Every day for the next 6 months, the king visited Felipa to check on her progress. Well, at the end of the first month, the flea was as big as a mouse, and the following month, as big as a cat. By the 6th month, she was as big as a goat, and the king could wait no longer. He ordered that the flea's skin be made into a tambourine. Then he had the royal dance instructor teach Belita to dance with her tambourine. And the king composed a riddle. It went like this. "Belita, Felipa, they look so well together. Belita, Felipa, if you can only answer whether. What animal is Felipa? What animal is Felipa? If you can tell about Felipa, you then can marry Belita." Well, soon the king grew tired of this business, since no one could answer the riddle. Every day more young men arrived to waste his time. So the king commanded that any suitor who could not guess the riddle would have his head cut off. Of course, all of the suitors disappeared. Belita, it seemed, was destined to live the rest of her days as an old maid. At this time, far away in the Castilian hills, there lived a shepherd. He was young and handsome, but he was poor as the poorest beggar in all of Spain. One day, the shepherd thought to himself, "I have nothing to lose. Perhaps I should try to answer the riddle." So he said goodbye to his mother and his brother. His mother gave him a small pouch filled with cheese, and his brother gave him a walking staff. And then they sent him on his way. Well, the shepherd had not gone far when he heard a tiny voice shout, "Stop! Stop!" The shepherd stopped and looked around, and there on the ground was a small black ant. "Thank you for not stepping on me," said the ant. "I am very grateful." The shepherd told the ant he was on his way to the king's palace, and the ant immediately said, "Please take me with you. I have always wanted to see the king's palace." "But I can't carry you," said the shepherd. "How about your pouch?" said the ant. "I have cheese in my pouch," answered the shepherd, "and you would get it all dirty." "Oh, but I'll wipe my feet," said the ant, "and I promise not to step on your cheese." So the shepherd put the ant in his pouch and walked on. He walked all day, and in the evening he slept by a small stream. In the morning, when he awoke, he heard a small voice calling, "Help! Help!" The shepherd looked around, and in the stream in front of him he saw a mouse thrashing about in the water. He reached into the water with his staff and saved the mouse. Thank you for saving my life," said the mouse. "How can I repay you?" "There's no need for that," said the shepherd. "I'm on my way to the king's palace to try and answer the riddle. If I can't answer it, I shall have my head cut off. And if I do answer it, I shall be rich." "Well then," said the mouse, "can you take me with you to the palace?" "But I have no place to hide you," replied the shepherd. "You have a pouch," said the mouse. "But I have my breakfast inside the pouch. There's not enough room for you too." "If you ate your breakfast now, there would be plenty of room," begged the mouse. It was true, and the shepherd was hungry. So he took out the cheese and gave a small piece to the mouse and a smaller piece to the ant. And after they ate, they continued on their way. When the shepherd arrived at the palace, he became frightened, so he sat under a tree to try to regain his courage. "What's wrong?" asked the mouse. "The thought of losing my head is not very pleasant," said the shepherd. "Come on, we will help you," said the mouse. So the shepherd went up the palace stairs and said he had come to answer the riddle. When he saw the shepherd, the chamberlain gasped. "It's not too late to turn back," he said. But the shepherd was determined and was finally presented to the king. The king took in the sad sight of the poor shepherd and said, "A shepherd's life is better than no life at all." But the shepherd insisted on answering the riddle. So Belita danced, and the king repeated his riddle. "What animal is Felipa? What animal is Felipa? If you can tell about Felipa, you then may marry Belita." When the dance was over, the shepherd studied the tambourine carefully and knew right away it was not the skin of a sheep. "Can you guess what it is?" said the ant. "No, I can't," replied the shepherd sadly. "Quickly, let me out of the pouch. Maybe I can help," said the ant. The shepherd took the ant out of his pouch, and the ant crawled all over the tambourine. "There is no mistaking it," said the ant softly. "It is a flea." "Are you sure?" said the shepherd. "Absolutely," replied the ant. "Oh, stop muttering to yourself," said the king. "Quickly, answer the question." "Felipa is a flea," said the shepherd. Oh, the court was all in a flutter. I can't marry a poor shepherd, cried Belita. And you certainly shall not, said the king. But you gave your word, said the shepherd. It's just that you are so poor, said the king. How could you possibly care for my daughter? Instead, I will grant anything you wish. Just name it, and it's yours. Ask him to fill your pouch with gold, whispered the mouse. Well, then, I would like to have my pouch filled with gold, said the shepherd. That's easy enough, said the king. Quickly, bring some gold, he commanded. The chamberlain arrived with the gold, but the mouse had gnawed a hole in the bottom of the pouch, and the gold poured right through. The chamberlain went to get more gold, and then more and more, because the pouch was never full. Finally, the shepherd said, Enough. Now I am a rich man. I can support your daughter in any manner she wishes. And so it was the shepherd married a princess and lived a long, comfortable life. The mouse and the ant lived happily too, for the shepherd never forgot how they had helped him.
Y colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado. The Spanish people have a special love for friendly animals. Among their favorites are two who appeared in this story, La hormiguita, the little ant, and El ratón, the mouse. Now, a make-believe story like The Flea is a fairy tale. But other animal stories which teach people how to live are called fables. Read and enjoy folk tales from Spain and from all over the world. You can find them in your school or public libraries. Or make up a story of your own. Y colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado. Share a story with a friend, so our tales will never end.
The preceding program was funded in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Today you will hear two stories. First, The Lazy Fox, and then the story of Señor Coyote and Señor Fox. Our first story, The Lazy Fox, is from Argentina. Argentina. Argentina is the second largest country in South America. The character of the fox was brought to South America in stories carried by the Spanish explorers of long ago. You see, the fox is a character often found in the folk tales of Spain. The lazy fox tries to outwit the hard-working armadillo. The armadillo is an animal found only in the American continents. So, in this story from Argentina, we'll see a blending of European and South American cultures. Señor Coyote and Señor Fox is a story from northern Mexico. In Mexico, there are many stories about Coyote, a character borrowed from Indian folklore. Coyote is very clever and can usually get the best of anyone. Y ahora escuchemos. Listen now to the tales of the Lazy Fox and Señor Coyote and Señor Fox.
Once there was a fox who was very well known for the tricks he played on everyone. This fox owned a farm, but he never did any work on it. He would lie around all day long in the coolest shade. One day he looked out at his field and wondered how he could get someone to plant and harvest it for him. All day long that armadillo works in the hot sun on that rock patch he calls a farm. Why, it should be easy to talk someone so stupid into doing all my work for me. At the end of the harvest, I'll even give him a share, but just a small one. The fox hurried over to the armadillo's farm and found him working in the field. "Ah, good morning, Armadillo. How is it going?" called the fox. The armadillo looked up and said, "Not very well. You know, this land is so rocky, I have to be very careful or I'll break my plow." "Well," said the fox, "I think I can help you." "Me?" said the armadillo. "How can you help me?" "You know, I have a very nice piece of land. If you would only plant it for me, I would ask for only a small share in payment." "Why are you so generous?" asked the armadillo. "Oh, this has been a very good year for me," said the fox, "and I've decided to let others share in my good fortune." "That's very kind of you," said the armadillo as he leaned back on his hoe. "What kind of crop do you want to plant?" "Anything you want to plant," said the fox, "and I'll let you have half of the crop." "Half?" said the armadillo. "Better yet, I'll let you have anything that grows above the ground, and I'll keep what grows below the ground." Now, the fox knew the armadillo loved potatoes, so he just assumed that would be the armadillo's choice. "That sounds fair to me," said the armadillo, and they shook hands on their agreement. The next day, the armadillo and his family got up early and went to work on the fox's field. When the fox finally got around to checking on their work, it was nearly sunset. "How is it going?" shouted the fox. "We're almost through planting," answered the armadillo. "But it looks like rain, so we'd better hurry and finish up today." The fox looked up and saw the clouds gathering, so he hurried away without asking what it was they were planting. Well, the crop grew and grew, and at last it was time to harvest the crop. The armadillo family arrived early in the morning, and by noon they had harvested a fine crop of wheat. Well, the fox didn't get up until midday, so when he went out to the field to collect his share, all that remained was the shriveled, tasteless roots. Oh, the fox was furious. He raced right over to the armadillo's house, and when he got there, he found the family eating bread. "There's been a terrible mistake," said the fox. "What's the problem?" said the armadillo. "Didn't we keep our part of the agreement?" "Yes, of course you did, but I thought..." The fox was going to say he thought they were going to plant potatoes, but he didn't. Instead, he said shrewdly, "I thought you liked roots." "I do," said the armadillo. "Well, next season I want everything that grows above the ground," said the fox. "That sounds fair to me," answered the armadillo. The fox went away with his stomach grumbling. He had planned to trick the armadillo out of the entire harvest, and now he had nothing to eat. Again, the next season, the armadillos diligently worked the field. The fox didn't bother to show up until the day of the harvest, and on that day, he didn't arrive until noon. By then, the armadillos were on their way home, and all that was left were the tops of the potato plants the armadillo had planted. "Come back," hollered the fox. "I think you're trying to trick me." "But that's what we agreed, isn't it?" replied the armadillo. "You never think of me when you plant," said the fox. "Next season, I want the tops as well as what grows under the soil. You can have all that grows in the middle." "Well, I don't know," said the armadillo. "I think it's only fair. I didn't get any of the first two crops," demanded the fox. The armadillo was silent for a moment and then said, "All right, I think it's fair too." The fox went away with his stomach grumbling again. He looked at his shadow and thought, "Oh, how thin I'm getting." But this time he felt certain there was no way the armadillo could get any of the crop, and at least that made him feel a little better. The next harvest, the fox arrived early in the morning to find the armadillo had planted corn. The crop was large, and the ears were especially succulent, but they grew right in the middle of the plant. "You have tricked me again," said the fox. "How could that be?" said the armadillo. "We gave you just what you asked for." The hungry fox watched the armadillo haul away the corn harvest. "That's the last time I'm going to let you use my fields," he shouted. The armadillo didn't say anything. He just walked away slowly, because not only was the crop heavy, but he had put on a lot of weight over the last 3 seasons. Now, on another day, in a desert not too far away, the coyote was looking for something to eat. He saw a large mesa in the distance, and he thought he might find a small animal sleeping in the shade of the cliff. When he arrived by the edge of this great cliff, he began looking around. But instead of the tasty little animal, he found his old enemy, the fox, sleeping as usual. "Aha! Here's my chance to get that fox," thought the coyote. The fox, however, never sleeps like other animals. He sleeps with one eye open. So when he saw his enemy, the coyote, sneaking up on him, the fox jumped to his feet and began pushing hard against the rock cliff. "Help me!" he shouted at the coyote. "Please help me, or this cliff will fall on us and kill us both." The coyote was a bit confused. He looked at the fox, straining and pushing against the rock cliff like his life depended on it. "See for yourself," said the fox. "The cliff is falling." The coyote looked up to the top of the cliff, and sure enough, it looked as if it were going to fall over on him. He jumped to the cliff wall next to the fox and began pushing with all his might. "Whew, that certainly was close," said the fox. "I'd certainly be dead if you hadn't come along." The coyote looked up again and saw that it was still falling, so he pushed very hard, so hard that he was kicking up ground with his feet. "We're doomed," said the fox sadly. "We will probably die here together." "No, we won't," said the coyote. "Help will come soon enough." "No, we are the only ones here, and no one ever comes this way." The coyote looked up only to scare himself again and pushed even harder against the cliff. "I've got an idea," perked up the fox. "There may be a way out of this." "What's that?" grunted the coyote. "I'll go get help, and you stay here and hold up this cliff," said the fox. Why don't you hold up the cliff and I'll go for help? Asked the coyote. Well, you are more than twice as strong as I am and can surely hold it up by yourself. I'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, replied the coyote, but hurry. Push harder, harder, called the fox as he ran away. The coyote pushed and pushed. His arms and legs hurt so badly he thought they would break. A few minutes became an hour became 2. The coyote pushed so hard he began to dig a hole in the ground with his feet. The day passed, the sun set, night came. Oh, it was cold and dark. The coyote shivered and called out for the fox, but the fox didn't come. When the sun finally rose, he was so tired he was quivering. I can't last much longer, he gasped. Tears were rolling down his face. This is the end, he thought. I might as well try to make a run for it, because if I stay, I will die anyway. He gave one last shove, and with all the strength he had left, he ran away from the cliff. When he looked back, he saw the mesa still standing. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. It wasn't going to fall. Not now, not in 100 years. He had been tricked. The fox was nowhere to be found. He was napping in some dark, cool place far away.
Y colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado. These are just 2 stories which have been translated from Spanish. There are hundreds of others. You can find stories from Mexico and Argentina and from all over the world in your school or public libraries. Read and enjoy the folk tales of the world. Y colorín colorado, este cuento se ha acabado. Share a story with a friend so our tales will never end.
The preceding program was funded in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.